The narrative going around the industry for the past, 10 years has been that story games are somehow dead. As if you can't make a single player game anymore without attaching some garbage, shitty ass, half broken fucking multiplayer to it. I really just, if you can't tell, have a disdain for this narrative, this fabrication that somehow you can't make a single player story game anymore without attaching, some kind of multiplayer to it. I think it's a crock of shit. And not only do I think it's a crock of shit, I think that it's been a crock of shit and always will be a crock of shit. Because it's never been proven to be true. Obviously, multiplayer games are incredibly popular, but so are some story games. I just think that this is a bunch of people regurgitating the same shitty, brain-dead fucking take till it's so mushy and lifeless and formless that you could have found it in your grandma's attic, probably from 1955. So listen up. If any of you fuckers think that there's no such thing as good story games anymore, I'm going to introduce you in depth to 4 of them. We'll go from there. So before jumping into the video, I'm just gonna point out right now, if not obvious, that hey, if you want to play any of these games completely blind, 100% just go play them. Just pause this video, play them, and then come back to it later on when you know kind of the games and stuff. The games I'm going to be talking about are Outer Wilds, Cloudpunk, Weird West, and Road 96. All indies as well. That's the point of this video. I'm going to try my best to keep spoilers out of the review, but obviously I'm going to have to talk a little bit about the plot and stuff. I mean, they are story games after all. And so if you want to go in completely blind, I would pause and come back to it later on after you've played some of the games. Or if you don't really care, I will let you know if anything serious spoiler heavy is going to happen. I'll tell you individually. Outer Wilds is genuinely one of the best games I have ever played, period. It was a game made by Mobius Digital and it was released May 28th, 2019. Ironically, day before my birthday. Thanks, Mobius. Simple synopsis of the story is that, without any spoilers, is that kind of a weird frog squid guy, thinking about worms in my skin out here, and your race has recently discovered space travel. Pog you, super hype. So you're gonna go out and discover stuff about the universe and bring it back to your colony, and not only discover stuff about the universe and your solar system, but discover stuff about this ancient alien race who used to live in your solar system. So it's kind of like an archaeology game where you go around, you find little secrets or story things that help you progress to fully understanding the solar system and or this ancient alien race that used to live in your solar system. Not only that, but you have a cute little board where you can see rumors and where things connect to each other that you find out. It's very cool. There's no fucking waypoints, there's no tractor beams. You just gotta figure out where you gotta go and you gotta make it work. And it's guys, it's very good. It's very, very good. I would highly recommend playing it, and if you're going to play it, I would highly recommend not looking up anything beyond what I'm telling you here before playing it. The least you know about the game, the better it is for you, unironically. Kind of brings back this childlike wonderment of discovery, this feeling of finding some secret out that you've never found before, or finding some way to do something that you've never found before, and finding out oh, that can happen in a game, and all this sort of stuff. It brings back this sort of feeling of discovery that you don't really get outside of that in games anymore. And I think the main mechanic on display here is the time loop. There, I've said it. This game's in a time loop. Listen, you discover it within the first 45 minutes of the game. I think it's okay to talk about it. This time loop is 22 minutes long. You have 22 minutes to do whatever you want in the game, and then you die and wake up again, and yada yada blah blah. Not only is it a sick mechanic, but it's actually kind of interesting how it manages your stress levels in a way when it comes to how you perform in some challenging areas. For me, I don't see those areas as challenging as they once were, because I realized oh, I'm not even gonna really die. I'm just gonna go, back to the campsite and then I just get to go back and do it again. I know the way back. It's super simple. I don't know. It takes some of that pressure, that stress off of it, because you realize oh, I might really die or lose any progress. I just have to, you know, fly back, which is not really much of a hassle. And the second mechanic on display here is the physics engine that the game runs in. A lot of the planets have their own like weird physics that are time mapped to the, you know, time loop itself. For instance, there's an Ash Twin project where there's a planet who spews sand onto a desert planet, and then as time goes on in the loop, the sand planet that has sand at the beginning has way less sand and more things get revealed, whereas the desert planet that doesn't have sand at the beginning, that planet gets a bunch of their secrets covered up by the sand. It's very interesting. It's a very cool way to do this, and it's so cool how they made this all work together. Okay, away from the nerdy stuff, I can feel people wanting to click off already. Let's talk about the message that this game is trying to give to people. I think the message it's trying to give is the joy of discovery. I feel like there's nothing outside this game that I have felt that's quite like it. Every time I've discovered something new, or a different way to an area I was trying to get to, or I found like some runes on a wall that I could read, or I found a signal, or whatever it may be, I find something. And I feel this like sense of anticipation and excitement that is hard to get in games nowadays. And I don't know, man. I feel like this game is really honestly something special in that regard. It felt like the first time when I played Double Dash and I figured out you could swap the passenger and driver so you can use both your items. Or it felt like, you know, when you press L when you land in Melee and your landing lag is cut in half. Like it feels like a revolution, you know, and like almost every discovery in Outer Wilds is like that. I recently watched a video made by Video Game Archaeology where they talk about archaeology in video games. Shocking, I know. Wait for this twist though. Not only do they talk about archaeology in video games, they also talk about archaeology in Outer Wilds. Crazy. And apparently a lot of the systems they use for archaeology is kind of similar to what they do in real life, in, you know, different ways here and there. Obviously you're a giant squid alien frog thing, but like the actual methods they use for archaeology apparently are pretty similar to what they do in real life, which I thought was really cool. I would recommend that video, by the way. It's actually fantastic. Again, watch play Outer Wilds first. And listen, all this information I've told you here is probably stuff you find out within like the first hour of you playing. There's so much game to be played. There's so much game to be discovered just waiting. Speaking of games that I would recommend to everybody though, like I would this game, let's talk about Trauma and move on to the next game. Road 96 is an adventure narrative video game made by the developers known as DigiXArt. The game is set in the year 1996, and you live under an authoritarian regime in the country known as Petria. Play as a bunch of teens trying to cross the border into a new country and into freedom, trying to escape the regime that Tarek, the president, has put into place. Throughout, you get to talk to NPCs and deal with these encounters in different ways depending on how you feel is the best way to solve it. You can talk to NPCs about like politics, relationships, friendships and how to deal with them, the rise and fall of this like nation you live in, about trauma, a lot of trauma, all while you get to observe the insanely divided and insanely oppressed countryside of Petria as you escape across the border. The main mechanic on Showcase here is that the adventure that you go on is procedurally generated. Every scenario is actually like thought out and made, obviously, but the order in which you do these scenarios is completely different for everybody else. There's a couple of story ones that like have to be placed in certain ways so that, you know, it makes sense, but all the other ones are completely randomized, procedurally generated. There's a couple that I never even got on my first playthrough of the game. It's fantastic, man. I think that's a really cool way to do procedural generation in a story game. The way that it works is that basically every run you have is completely different because each teen you play as has no name, has no face, has no voice lines. So they're able to just kind of throw you into all these scenarios that are completely different from one another. And each run that you make in the game, well, you know, run, is completely different from one another as well, keeping the replay value fresh as you can in a narrative game. Otherwise though, this game isn't really, you know, made for mechanics by mechanics. Like a lot of these story games, they're not necessarily made for their fascinating, intense mechanics that are so in-depth and yada yada blah blah. They're mainly made in love for the story that they tell and come up with. So much so that the only other really standout mechanic in this game even is the mechanic of being able to make choices, which is just kind of like day one RPG stuff. The point of this game, I feel like, the message I feel like, is that politics really matter. All these people can say they're apolitical or that they don't care or whatever, but eventually things get bad enough to where you have to care. And normally by that point it is already far too late. I think this game does a fantastic job at like showing this. You know, again, listen, it's a shorter game, it's a little rash sometimes, it's a little rushed in certain sections. They have some nuance here and there, but sometimes they aren't afforded it, and it can seem a little like rush isn't the right word, but like instead of a scalpel, it's a small little like 2-ounce hammer, you know what I mean? Like it's not quite as precise, but it's not as heavy as like a normal hammer you would think of. At one point in the game, I was hitchhiking, and a couple picked me up. There was already another hitchhiker in the car. Eventually, the guy out of the couple goes, "Are you guys political?" And in this, you can either say yes or no, obviously. And he basically then questions like why you're crossing the border, what you're gonna do to help your country, and you can either pick like protest or vote or just trying to leave as your options there, or something along those lines. And he basically goes, "Look, because you're leaving, to me it means you are political, no matter whether you like it or not, because you are the group." I mean, he doesn't say the rest of this, but the point that he's trying to make is this tyrant that we live under, Tyrak, ironic how his name's that, his policies are directly affecting the people that you are. It's affecting teens specifically. Because of that, and because you guys are trying to leave or take action in some way, you are political. You can't escape it. Or I think another great quote that kind of summarizes my point is this quote from Run the Jewels. The quote goes, "Funny fact about a cage, never built for just one group. So when that cage is done with them and you're still poor, it'll come for you. The newest lowest on the totem, well golly gee, you have been used. You helped fuel the death machine that down the line will kill you too." Which is, you know, very well stated. By the way, the song that's off of is Walking in the Snow off of RTJ 4, if you're interested in listening to it. Would recommend that album very heavily. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. I personally feel like this game is just trying to grab the player by the lapel and just shake it and go, "Politics are important. Shut up." I think the itch this game scratches is the itch of choice making. This game is all based around what choices you make, and whatever choices you make affect the story in some way or another, at least. And when you make these choices, you know, later on you will see the fruits of your labor, whether it be nothing changing, whether it be more peaceful protests, or, you know, a little bit more of violent protests. You know, it's the same itch that Fallout New Vegas scratched me the first time I played that game. Okay, listen, this is a super personal note here, but you know, this game is basically follows a bunch of homeless teenagers as a journey to illegally cross a border away from a dictatorship that is allegedly putting kids in work camps. When I was a teenager, I used to know a lot of homeless teenagers as well. Obviously not fleeing from a dictatorship, but, you know, fleeing from abusive parents, drugs, friends, whatever it may be. And even for a little bit, I was homeless as well, before moving out on my own at 18. On and off, you know, there's nothing too serious. And while this game doesn't embody the physical challenge of homelessness, as food can be found somewhat frequently, and same with money, it embodies the feeling and the stories of homeless youth in a lot of ways. And the first day I played it for 4.5 hours straight and almost cried 3 times because I'm a big man. And because it really hit deep, it really hit home for me in a lot of ways. There's a couple characters in this game that that not only did I know, but are unfortunately no longer with us, and it reminded me a lot of like some friends I knew. And you know, I just wanted to urge you to play this game, because I just really appreciate that they're willing to take these types of topics on and without shying away from the reality of them. Genuinely fantastic game. if you don't mind the absence of, you know, quote unquote real gameplay in the form of being able to like shoot things and shit like that, this may be one of the best games I've played for me personally, because it just hits so close to home. So I would just like to thank the GX Art for making a truly fantastic game. So anyways, let's talk about a weird mythical isometric game. That should lighten the mood up a bit. Weird West, a fantastic isometric RPG that was made by Wolfeye Studios and released on March 31st of 2022. You play as 5 characters solving specific problems within their lives, some more gruesome than others, and whether it be helping someone else or helping themselves. With each character, depending on what you choose, you know, the world mutates around you into this weird mix of like not really spaghetti western, but definitely a western frontier sort of aesthetic with a weird kind of like mythological gothic like creature type of aesthetic. A mix of different horror themes and mythos from different cultures surrounding the world really makes this game pop and feel different. And you get to make choices about yourself throughout this game, the world that you live in, the people in the world you live in, and even the world itself at certain points. Overall, this game's fantastic. I'm a big fan of it so far. Mechanically, there's not much that's super special about this game. You know, it's an isometric RPG. I think it's cool that you get to play 5 characters. I think that's interesting. The only real thing that like is mechanically interesting is that there's 2 different perk pages. There is an upgrade page and a perk page. The perk page is across all characters. Every single character in the game shares these perks. There's stuff like, you know, raise max health, and followers have more health, you shoot faster, you dodge faster, you know, general stat buffs like that. You upgrade these by finding stuff, a item called the Golden Ace of Spades. You find all these cards around the world and you can, you know, spend them to upgrade this stuff. And then the other form of upgrading is just a normal upgrade, and that's for character specific stuff, because there's certain abilities in there that you can upgrade that are character specific and not game specific. So each character gets a different one. Like the Bounty Hunter, for instance, I think gets a couple gun perks. You know, each one is different depending on what kind of character they are. I think the only other really cool mechanic is just kind of how alive this world feels. This world is one of those worlds where once you assume control of your next character, because again, you control 5, you can go back and visit your old character, and they will be there just existing. You can recruit them, and not only can you recruit them, but they can fucking die. They can die on you right there. And I feel like that's just so cool, because Wolfeye Studios trust their players. They trust them to be able to make those smart decisions to hopefully not kill them. Because, you know, I mean, it's a lot harder to beat the game when the characters aren't around, you know, by the end of it. You know, but if you do end up killing them, it's fine. There's a way around it, but it's just know it's annoying. It's better to keep them alive. All right, I'm going to warn you guys right here. This part may get a little spoilery. I'm going to put a chapter here, obviously. So if you want to skip this, open up chapters and skip to the, you know, next part where it says Weird West Part 2. Anyways, I'm going to start spoiling stuff in 3, 2, 1, go. I think the general message of this game is that things are often too good to be true. Throughout the story, you keep hearing about this experiment that you're apparently a part of in some way, shape, or form. Even after the next character that you transition over to, you keep hearing about it, like you're all connected together in this weird way that you don't really fully understand. And then this guy who's you keep running into him even though you don't really have any connection. He is looking for the secret to immortality, and you could help him along the journey or you don't have to. It's kind of whatever. And by the end of the game, you run into him one last time. In the whole game, he's just talking about how much he wants immortality because he lost his faith in God and he doesn't believe there's anything else out there, and it scares him, so he wants to live forever, basically. And by the end of the game, he finds some immortal people, and all they want is to be mortal again. They were immortal for 4,000 years. And all they want is to go back to being mortal once again. Because after living 4,000 years, seeing all your friends, loved ones, family rise up, die, and turn to dust, empires rise and fall, new cultural norms, entire civilizations fall around you. Like, you tend to kind of lose the ability to form emotions in some way, shape, or form. And you know, the entire game, you keep hearing about this guy being like this hype man for immortality, like this guy who just thinks it's all of that. And at the end of the game, when you actually find some people who are immortal, they all fucking hate it. They're all bored, lonely, and they just want it to be done. They want to die. And the game starts asking questions where basically whatever you answer dictates the fate of the world in a lot of ways. And it's asking basically you, the player, did you feel bad for what you did? Did you feel bad for what you did in this playthrough? Did you feel bad for all the people you stole from, for all the people you killed, for all the bounties you went and hunted, for all the innocent civilians you may have killed? Like, do you personally feel like that would hurt you, or that would be bad, or that made you feel bad in some kind of way? It's kind of a genius way to make the player like think about their actions and what they did to these people throughout the entire game. It's a way to kind of do a meta commentary on story games and RPGs where the player has to make choices that are supposed to be tough. You know, and I kind of have to say, I can't expect much else from former Dishonored and Prey devs, former Arcane devs, than with this game. This is right up their alley in the sense of an ending. It's fantastic. Okay, I'm done with spoilers now. Moving back onto the normal part of the review. I think the itch this game scratches is the itch of consequences. Everything you do in this game will have some good or bad consequence coming after it. This game doesn't fuck around. It doesn't handhold you. And you know, by now, if you guys have watched my Cyberpunk video and my my modern video game video, you're probably sick and tired of me talking about consequences in video games. Sorry about that. So I'm not going to bore you again. If you haven't seen it, I will just link it with the timestamp in the description below, so you can go see what my opinions are about consequences. But anyways, would I recommend this game? I would. I will say there are some people who are saying they had some performance issues during this game, some glitches, some unintentional stuff like that. I personally didn't get that at all while I was playing it, thankfully. But if you are running with some hardware that's not as good, or you know, if you just get unlucky, you might have that issue too. So maybe wait till they patch some of that stuff out. But genuinely fantastic story, interesting story. A lot of things to be said about this game. I highly think it's a very good game. So moving on to the last game, where we talk about a completely apolitical game that has nothing to do with politics whatsoever. Trust me, bro, don't worry about it. Cloudpunk is a cyberpunk adventure game that's very story-driven, made by the company Ion Land Studio, based out of Germany, in which the game came out on April 23rd, 2020 on the PC. Unfolding over the course of a single night, of which being her first night in the big city, you follow a girl named Rania while she drives her Hova, that's car for you fucking normals in the audience, around the city of Nivalis, making illegal deliveries to clients. Obviously, from a synopsis like that, you think that it'll totally be a normal game with absolutely no political leanings, right? Right? Listen, this game doesn't really have many interesting mechanics. I guess the most interesting mechanic in this game is the driving. When you first drive the Hova in this game, it feels clunky, feels kind of bad, honestly. It drifts weirdly, it's not the tightest at turning, it's kind of hard to avoid other cars or other Hovas, but as you play it more, you get more used to it, and you actually get kind of good at it, and you kind of like how it controls. And I could be giving them a lot of credit, I understand that, but I think that's intentional. Because Rania has never driven in the big city before. She's never even been in a big city before tonight. So she's kind of getting used to it throughout the night and trying to get used to like the ebb and flow of big city traffic. And I don't know if it's intentional. I may be smoking on that big shit tonight, but like, I think it was intentional. And if so, good shit, Ion Lance. It's a really interesting way to do that stuff. That being said, about the mechanics not really being there, The story for this game is fantastic, and I think it makes up for it in a decent amount of ways if you're, okay with that. I think the overarching message for this game is one of exploitation. Whether you want to believe it or not, in this society that we currently live in, you are always, always, always exploiting someone. Throughout the game, Rania meets more and more people from more and more different walks of life, literally from underbelly crime lords of Nivalis to high society Nivalis and CEOs and stuff like that. And throughout it, she kind of asks questions about some marginalized and oppressed people and why they're treated this way in this city where there's so much wealth that could be spread around or even helped out by donating and stuff like that. We talk about a lot of leftist politics in this game, like workers' rights, racism in the form of androids versus human, debt, unionization, homelessness, gentrification, classism, and just power dynamics in general. It's a constant feature throughout the game. It's not even like the fake exploitation thing that like Cyberpunk 2077 does, where like the gangs protect you or whatever. Like it's not like that at all. They're all after you. They're all after you to try to exploit you. They're all trying to get a one up on you. They're all trying to use you. And I think they explore all these in a pretty natural way. Once again, a little ham-fisted, a little rushed. This one even more than Road 96 in my opinion. I think Road 96 is more fleshed out than this game was. But I still think that I like it. I still think that it holds true. And listen, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Listen, me and my friends have a saying that Killing in the Name of by Rage Against the Machine may be the most obviously political song in the 90s. The chorus is literally, "Those that died are justified for wearing the badge. They're the chosen whites." And the verse is, "Some of those that work forces are the same that burn crosses." It's pretty overt about the political leanings that the band has, but even still, people in 2020 were somehow shocked that Rage Against the Machine has a leftist political leaning. You know who's never had a confused fan reach out to them about their political leanings? Dead Kennedys. Because one of their most famous songs is called Nazi Punk's Fuck Off. It's pretty hard to confuse what that means, Listen, I think it's great though that they're exploring this type of stuff, because even if you can't really choose what you're like going to do a lot of times, and even if you're not really like your own character like you are in Road 96, you're Rania who has a past and feelings and stuff like that, it still gets you thinking about that sort of stuff, it gets you invested in the politics of Nivalis and stuff like that. And I think that's a really interesting thing that not a lot of games really go for these days. Especially surrounding politics, Jesus Christ. And listen, this game is pretty short. I mean, I finished it in 11 hours, and I did some side quests. So, like, by the end of the night, by the end of this game, you will remember pretty much everybody you meet in this game and pretty much every conversation you've had in this game. Honestly, this game is really good at getting you immersed for how short it is. You start to really love like Camus and Rania and Control and all these like characters that you meet throughout the night. There's even some repeat customers and stuff like that you get to talk more to. It gets you really involved in this world that like is kind of just one big city. Really caring about like how their night's going and how they're dealing with this really shitty job that's pretty illicit and really annoying to deal with. It's a very bittersweet story, and honestly a very human story in a lot of ways. Expertly crafted by the writers over at Ion Lands, and I don't know. I have heard some people not like this game. I have a friend who doesn't really like it. I know there's other games that do it better. But I still think this game is fantastic. I still think this game is great. I will say though, I don't like the price of it. I got it on sale. If it goes on sale, would recommend it. I don't think I can justify the price point of it though for how short it is. I'll just be honest. Overall though, fantastically sweet story that makes you feel for all the characters in it, and it's kind of like being able to watch your friends' lives like slowly spiral out around them. It's a really interesting feeling you get. It makes you think about all these complex political ideals where you get to then immediately see what mishandling them can do to human beings. You can see the direct result of why handling these things correctly is so important. I would absolutely recommend this game if it goes on sale, or if you just have some money in your pocket and you really want to play this game, but I would recommend waiting for a sale. Anyways, let's get to the point. Why does weird narrative around single player games even exist? Honestly, it's really simple. AAA devs kind of realize that like live service games and multiplayer games can make more money. Listen, all you have to do is make an interesting gameplay loop that's fun to play, and you know, have some loot boxes, some skins in there, and you're kind of in the bank. You know, you're kind of making good money. Single player games, you only get one true point of purchase, and that's when they buy the game. There's not really microtransactions and story-based games. There's not really, if people are paying more money afterwards and to get more content, generally it's like a DLC where there's more hours of story involved, and you know, that kind of stuff. Game devs started realizing this slowly, that live service multiplayer games are way more lucrative. I feel like this started around the middle or end of the Xbox 360 era. And listen, this is all why a lot of companies are doing battle royales. Whether they're good or bad, this is the main reason why people make battle royales, is they're a cash cow. And not only that, but a lot of people genuinely enjoy those type of games. They love multiplayer games, they love shooters, they love other battle royales, and there's no knocking that. I understand why. There are some really good battle royales out there. You know, but I do really like single player games. Now here's the very obvious thing I kind of hinted at before. Story games never actually went away, ever, not even for like 10 seconds. The only reason why people think that story games went away is because they're only paying attention to AAA games. Once again, if you watched my last video, you've heard me yell about this enough, so I won't bore you. But a lot of people tend to only focus on AAA games, and that's what's unfortunate about this. If you want good games of any kind, really, you know, as long as you're not looking for, you know, graphics necessarily, I feel like indie games are just better in a lot of ways. Listen, basically what I'm saying is that people saw the focus on multiplayer games that were happening, like all these devs making just really multiplayer games, and they started freaking out. And if they weren't freaking out, someone they knew was freaking out, and that's just kind of how it's been for the past 10 years on repeat. And listen, people still make story-based games. Everyone will make story-based games. That's how it works. Listen, up until The Elder Scrolls Online, but that's the only made single-player games. Unfortunately, they weren't exactly all good. In fact, most weren't good. But they made single-player games only. And I mean, same thing with CG Projekt Red. I mean, shit, The Witcher 3 is one of the most beloved games of all time. Only single-player. Now, listen, if you want to talk about good story games, then... Anyways, my recommendation is that if you think this genre of games are dying in any way, shape, or form, please, 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 God, just buy indie games. Just support indie devs, buy indie games. That's all I can ask, please, God. Listen, I didn't even set out to make a video about more indie games, but you know, that's just kind of how the cards fell. Indie games are just kind of like really fucking good right now. That's kind of the issue here. Anyways, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me for this pretty long video. I think it's a fun video. Hopefully next video is not gonna be about gaming. If you're not into gaming, fear not. I think next video is gonna be about music again. There's some stuff I want to talk about. I love you guys very much. Thank you for subbing. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for riding with me. Really, if you want to help, show my videos to your friends. I know it's cringe, but just link them to them over like Discord or some shit. I don't care about likes. I don't care about comments. Like, those are nice and all, but like at the end of the day, I just want more people to see my stuff. I feel like I can do better than 90 views. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like I can do better than that. I'm just not. Listen, I never said I was the best. I think I'm pretty good though. So yeah, if you want to help out at all, that's what would help me. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to catch me in other places, I have a podcast on this channel called The Wiretap, and it's also on all audio platforms under The Wiretap. I talk about music and art, and sometimes I interview people, and we talk about how they make their art. It's pretty fun. Go check that out if you want. I also stream on Twitch. Most of the time I'm probably speedrunning Spelunky 2, but you know, if you want to, you know, hop over and say hi to me or whatever, you're more than welcome to. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me. If you want to help, send this video to somebody else. Make it like a pyramid scheme, like an MLM. Get fucked, idiot. You are now indoctrinated. See you guys later. No, my vape. I need that. I'm an addict. Oh, I bumped my mic. That's poor mic etiquette. No.